The last few days in this tournament, we've been covering every match. And even though India were winning, we all pointed out to the fact that the Indian batting is not firing on all cylinders. There seemed to be a bit of a worry there. Today, those worries came to a light, and this is what we were worried about. That Indian batting lineup on occasions not really firing on all cylinders. This was the day that we all were fearing.
Yes, I think any game you have to get off to a good start with the bat and with the ball. With the ball, you take early wickets. In the first 6 overs, you take 2 wickets. You give yourself a good chance to restrict the opposition to a reasonable total. And in the first 6 overs, if you get off to a start losing just maybe 1 wicket, then again, you give yourself a chance of chasing any total. But that is not what is happening. India has not been getting a good start from their opening batters. And in fact, they're losing a wicket pretty much in the first over of their innings. And that actually sets everybody back because suddenly the pressure then gets a little too much on batsman number 3. And I think that is where India has struggled because otherwise the batting is very good. But this time around, because they have not got off to a good start, they have struggled to put runs on the board.
The most obvious question, Sanibai, that comes to your mind is the fact that, this Indian team for the last year and a half was knocking off runs for fun. We're talking about chasing 187. They were knocking off 220, 230 for fun. There said on some occasions, they were even targeting 300. What's really happened to them? Yes, they've won majority of their encounters. This is the first loss. But that same batting lineup that would get 230 for fun is not being, reaching even 200. What's really happened to this batting then?
Yes, I think that's only because we're not getting off to a good start. The moment you get off to a flying start, you get to maybe 70 or thereabouts in the first 7 overs, 10 runs and over. Then in the remaining overs that you have with wickets in hand, you can then score at 12, 13, 14 runs and over per over and get to 190, 200 easily. But because the Indian team has just not been getting starts, that is the reason why they've not been able to chase totals. They're not been able to put massive totals on the board when they're batting first.
Okay. To your point then, because as you're pointing out, the problem is not being able to get to a good start. Though I remember in that year and a half that I was referring to, there were occasions where they didn't get off to a good start, yet would get, the upwards of 200, 220, 230. We still don't know what's really happened. Are they the pitches or is it the pressure of the ICC tournament that the scores have gone down? But be that as may, because you point out to not getting good starts, let me pin you down to it. Why do you think India is not getting good starts?
I think it is perhaps maybe just a little over-enthusiastic, response in trying to hit sixes rather than looking at the situation, rather than looking at the bowler, rather than looking at where the boundaries are, long boundaries. There are most of the grounds, one side is long, one side is a little bit short. So I don't think that appreciation has been shown where they're looking, to take advantage of the shorter boundary and look to play the big shots over there.
Okay. So that's one thing that you talk about, not getting to good starts. Let's analyze this game even in a deeper way. 20 for 3, you have South Africa on the mat. Do you think the Indian team missed a trick? The captain missed a trick, not getting Bumrah quickly? Because we knew that partnership, almost 100-run partnership, I think it was 97, if I'm not mistaken, between Brevis and Miller. That was the game there. Had you got that, nipped it in the bud, maybe they wouldn't have reached that daunting total, 187. You think an Indian team missed a trick, not getting Bumrah in the middle over, something that they would do previously as well, and then saving him for just the death overs?
No, I don't think that happened because, it was always a touchy, thing for the captain, whether to give another over to Bumrah or keep 2 towards the back end of the innings. He kept 2 towards the back end of the innings, which also was good. Otherwise, because of that, Bumrah was able to get those wickets, couple of wickets. Otherwise, South Africa could well have ended over 200. So I think, I don't think you can fault the captaincy of Surya Kumar Yadav. You've got to give credit to the South African batters, particularly Brevis and David Miller, for that partnership, which actually steadied the innings. Look, India never got a partnership. Even if India got a partnership half of what Brevis and Miller put, it could have been a different story. India never got a partnership going. They were losing wickets at regular intervals. And when that happens, however deep your batting is, then it's a struggle. to get to the asking rate and to try and keep up with the required run rate.
Saibhai, we'll go back to the tactical analysis, and the one thing that seemed very obvious. I'm not saying it in hindsight now that the game is done. Even at the toss, many found it very awkward that someone like Akshar Patel doesn't play. Previous game versus Netherlands, maybe they thought because it was an inconsequential game, you brought in a Washington Sundar, but Akshar has been your top performing spin bowling all rounder. When you look at India's batting, they don't make changes based on matchups. They've got a lot of left-handers, but the captain says no. We will go with our best team. Matchups don't matter. Form matters. When it comes to bowling, you look at matchups. You get an off spinner, but drop your best bowling all-rounder in Akshar Patel. I remember 2 matches where Akshar Patel has helped you in this particular tournament. You were against the run of play. Batters were getting runs. USA, Pakistan, 2 games come to my mind. He got to the crucial wickets. Was it right then to keep someone like Akshar Patel out because you're thinking matchups?
Well, I think that was either a question of looking at an off spinner who can bowl to the left-handers in the South African composition. That is the reason why Washington Sundar was picked. So I don't think that is something where things can go either your way or it doesn't go your way. So I don't think that is not having Akshar is the reason India lost. I don't think that is the thing. Yes, Akshar would have certainly been a big help, but because you needed an off spinner who could turn the ball away from the left-handers, say particularly David Miller, Quinton de Kock, they had Ryan Rickelton, those 3 dangerous batters. That's the reason why Washington Sundar had been included.
Okay, Saima, without beating around the bush, direct question. Are India still the favourites to retain the T20 World Cup title? They were for majority of this tournament, at the start of this tournament, throughout this tournament. Now South Africa have beaten them. Are South Africa the favourites now?
Well, South Africa definitely have a head start. There's no question about it. When you play the first match of the Super 8 series and you win that, you certainly give yourself a head start. Just like England have done. England beating the home teams, Sri Lanka today. They've given themselves a head start in that group. So, yes, now what India will be doing is India will be playing catch-up. India will be looking over their shoulder all the time because they need to know what, because now the net run rate will also possibly come into play. So, therefore, I think, it's important for India to win the matches against Zimbabwe and against West Indies by big margins.
Yes, those matches really become important for the Indian team. But to the million-dollar question, Zaimai, your gut feeling, India still, despite this loss, making the semis?
Yes, I'm confident that they can win the next 2 matches and make it to the semis. They win the next 2 matches, I think they will make it to the semis.
Anyway, Sri Lankan team playing at home, and this is the question after this loss. Are the hosts in Sri Lanka too reliant on that one man? I mentioned him in the pictures that we were seeing, Pathum Nissanka. He fires the win. He doesn't fire. They're in trouble.
Yes, I think a lot of their batters got out to the leading edge. So they were obviously looking to play for the turn when there was no turn from the England bowlers, and they were all caught and bowled. So I think they might have misread the pitch themselves, their own pitch, and that is the reason why they were not able to get the kind of partnerships again. And yes, Nissanka, the man in form, if he gets out early, obviously that puts a strain and pressure on the others to follow. Even Kusal Mendes, who's been another one who's been in good form, getting out early didn't help Sri Lanka's cause.
Okay, Saimai, finally, before we let you go, not too many memorable moments for the Indian team in this game today, but one, of course, was to watch you, a legend of cricket, walk out with that T20 trophy with the boss of Google, Sundar Pichai. Both of you brought the trophy there. Then I heard Sundar Pichai in the commentary saying that, you're his inspiration, you are his idol growing up. He had all your pictures, your posters in his room. Just explain to us the meeting and what is the conversation that was there, that happened between the two of you.
Well, I've met him before earlier on, where he had told me about having the posters in his bedroom. It always feels nice to meet somebody who's been a fan of yours. a well-wisher of yours, and somebody who's done so well in his career and done so much in the tech world. So yes, I think it was wonderful to meet him again and to take the World Cup trophy. Both of us, so as we were walking with the trophy, said, "I hope Surya Kumar Yadav will get his hands on the trophy on the 8th." And both of us are, I'm sure, praying that that happens.